What's up, Modern Bay Tribe? Travis here with the Modern Bay Company. As you guys know, we do Subaru conversions into vintage Volkswagen bay window buses. It is totally our thing. And here in front of me is a Subaru engine that we've built. It is ready to go in Gus, the bus behind me. This guy's almost ready to go in. And Gus is going to be our first automatic transmission build. So this is actually a build that's gone from a manual transmission to an automatic transmission, which is not a small feat. And we're really excited to get this going. We're almost there. We're going the last few steps here to prep this, to put it in. And this video is all about how to do the mount, AN fittings for the cooler. And then I'm going to be talking about the throttle and the kickdown linkage as well. So this is hopefully going to be helpful on showing you how to put a Vanagon transmission, which is this unit, a Vanagon automatic into a bay window bus, Subaru or not. First things first here, we're going to deal with these lines. So you will not see these two on a bay window bus automatic transmission. It's a big part of the reason we're using a Vanagon one. It has the ports that you can tap into for an external oil cooler, which helps in general on any install, but especially on a Subaru install. You're hauling buns across the country hours on end. It's really helpful to have an external oil cooler. And so that's where we've got these two connections. So I'm going to go ahead and I actually already disconnected this top one. And then I'm going to take this off and we're going to plug it up temporarily, as well as this one down here. And I've got something to catch the oil as well, should we have some that comes out. But let me go ahead and get this going. The reason that I'm taking these off as they are is this will not clear the torsion tube on the bay window buses. And the reason that I'm doing it with a wrench like this is because I don't really care about these threads. I'm not using these pieces at all. But I need to take these off to put our AN fittings on, which will clear the torsion tube. Not sure. I'm gonna go ahead and, all right. So these are the same size threads, the elbow and the bottom ones. And so this actually ended up all just coming out as one. So this guy, we may well see some gear oil come out as we take this out. I'm going to try to catch what we can. I think the rest. I need to plug this. Whoop. There we go. All right, we're done with that. We don't need any more. We've got our own lines. Okay, step one is complete. Look at us, we're doing things. Next up here, if we look at our transmission mount, make sure you get the correct mount. It should look like this. And the way that it goes on is like yay. Like yay. People say that? I don't know. But it goes on like this. And if you'll see here, this mount, which is for a bay window bus, but still fits the Vanagon transmission, it will go on, but it's not flush. It's at an angle. And because it's at an angle, we need to clearance the backside of this mount here and here to clearance right here and for the oil cooler. And so not a hard deal. We're going to go over to the grinding wheel. We're going to grind that down, test fit it, make sure we've got plenty of clearance on it. And then once we do, and we're nice and flush, then we can actually mount this guy and then proceed to mount our AN fittings. All right, so that took a minute here in the shop, but for you guys, it was instantaneous. But I have now modified our mount. So you'll see here, I took a grinder to this side and ground actually a little bit into the rubber. Got to do it. Sorry, folks. Got to have that clearance. And then ground out enough for this profile here. So when I fit it up, it is nice and flush against the bosses on the transmission here. And I actually, so I wouldn't have had to clearance as much if I wanted to mount it up high like this, or if I wanted to add a couple spacers on these studs. I don't want to do that though, because we actually have mounted this exact same setup in another bus over here. And I learned that our engine is actually forward a little bit more than it normally is already, and it's tilted up a little bit. And so I want to have this mounted up so that the front of the engine is down a bit when we actually install it. And so for me, that's important for this kind of install. If you're doing an air-cooled motor, it should not matter. You should actually be able to clearance less because you can put this up. But for us, we're all the way down. We're clearance as much as we need to be. We're going to take this guy, scuff it, and give it a coat of paint, just so we're not, bare metal over here, and then we're going to install it. But our next step here is to use this AN fitting on the top. We're going to do the top first, and this is what's called a banjo bolt. So this spaces the point where we need to attach everything. which this is a preview of what's to come. It's going to go essentially like this because the torsion tube on the bus comes right here, and we need to clear that torsion tube. Otherwise, this will go right into it and it just won't work. So that'll be step one. Step two is the bottom one. This one's, you know, there's no fluid that's going to leak out here. And then on this banjo fitting, it comes with, you can see in B-cam, we've got these two washers. We've got the banjo bolt. We've got this guy. So we put one washer on. These are essentially crush washers. They crush and make a good tight seal. I'm going to put that guy on, put this in here. So instead of an O-ring on this fitting, we have two crush washers. We do not want to torque these too tight. I'm going 5 foot-pounds, and even that I'm feeling like is a bit much. I want this to end up vertical so it clears my torsion tube. So I'm going to roll with this and make sure that as it torques down, it ends up pretty much at 12 o'clock. All right. Now on these guys, as opposed to just an O-ring, I'm actually going to go a touch tighter, and this is just me doing it by feel from doing lots of brake jobs and whatnot with these banjo bolts. So that is good and snug. I'm feeling great about this fitting right here. And then the next one goes right up here. Now, I do not use Teflon tape or anything like that. You don't want to on these kinds of fittings, or it gives a higher likelihood of leaking, actually. So don't do that. Do this. Put this guy on just about like yay. So we're pretty much at 12 o'clock and I'm coming out straight back. And I believe this is where we're going to want to land once we're on the bus. One thing that as we're putting this on the bus, you want to keep eyes on this, that when you're installing the transmission, this guy isn't hitting your torsion tube or anything else. It's an easy mistake to make. Don't ask me how I know that. But I do. Again, just a little past snug on these fittings. That is tight, nice and tight. Moving on to the bottom here. So for the bottom, we're using one of these guys, which I think, Vibrant Performance. Booyah, comes in a pack of 2. This is what we need. Just like we did up top, I'm gonna use a little bit of O-ring lube. So this O-ring silicone lube is great. It's like FDA approved, so I suck on it like a baby bottle sometimes. It's delicious, and it's not going to hurt me at all. It's not going to hurt these O-rings for sure. So what I'm going to do, pop this out real quick. We are going to get some leakage, so I'm going to do the quick change job, and I'm actually going to plug my end here. All right, starts gushing out. Ideally, you can do this part before your transmission is filled, but this is a German transaxle built transmission, and so they ship them full and ready to rock, which means I get a little bit of spillage. But all right, that's it. You really don't want to go too much on these guys. Hopefully that's going to seal it nice and tight. And then this guy is up next. Don't install this with that plug still in there. You'll be very sad. Here we go. And again, we're snug. I'm going just a little past snug. We're looking great. All right, so here is our freshly painted, thank you, Charlie, transmission mount. We clearanced right there to clearance around this guy, and then we clearance back here to clearance this little guy on the transmission. And then we're coming in and we're mounting it all the way down. So we're just gonna let it roll there. Double checking, we're perfectly flush on the back, so we are great there. And then these are some special nuts. Is that what she said, Charlie? I'm gonna go ahead and put these nuts on. They're just nuts, so they don't look quite normal, but they're flanged and they're nylock. Exactly what we need for this. And so I'm gonna bring these flush with the impact, and then I'm gonna torque them down to 18 foot-pounds. Here we go, 18 foot-pounds. Not that much, my friends. Boom. Is it just me, Charlie, or does it look good?
Oh, it looks good.
It looks good. Okay, good. Now, the other thing is, with our clearance, if you look at this, our fitting, which is this AN fitting right here, it's basically right up against that guy. So the unfortunate thing is if this fitting is leaking and we need to service it, not the best situation, simply because we can't access it. But I don't want to clearance up more than I have to into this guy. So I'm going to say, I'm going to trust this fitting, trust that it's not going to leak. If it does, it's going to be okay. We can drop the transmission enough by taking this mount off, drop it enough, take this off, address that. Hopefully we won't have to, but if we need to, we'll be okay. So the front end of our transmission is ready to mount in the bus. We're going to do a couple more things I'm going to show you guys on this side of the transmission, and then we're pretty much going to be ready to put this guy in, which is super exciting. So let's do it. So we're going to talk first about the throttle cable linkage and the kickdown. Normally on this type of setup, the throttle cable goes from the pedal over to right here, which we can see in this camera. And then it actuates this guy, and it doesn't do anything really in the transmission until you're at full throttle, and boom, it mechanically actuates the kickdown, which means it drops you down a gear from third to second. You can do that manually by actually shifting from third to second, but this system doesn't quite work, right? So this is the original piece of linkage that goes from back of the transmission here on the Volkswagen engine on the air-cooled motor up here. It does not go to the right spot. We're over here on our setup, and even if it were over here on your setup, it's just kind of a funky way to do it, and it has no real good clean connection to the motor. And so the way that I am doing it, which I personally think if you're doing a Subaru conversion with an automatic like this is the best way to do it, is to run parallel cables. Sounds a little weird, but hear me out. Gus behind me, he has the stock throttle cable setup pipe too, whatever you want to call it, going under the bus. That's going to go nice and cleanly right here. Love it. That's nice and easy to do a cable front to back right there. Front being from the pedal. Now this guy, the only time we really need this is for the kickdown, but we're going to run a second throttle cable in parallel, and right around here is where they're going to stop being parallel. This one's going to come over here and perfectly route into this guy, and then when you mash that pedal into the floor, it's going to click it into the lower gear. When we let it up, it's going to let it off. The other option is Rocky Mountain Westie Van Cafe's attachment for the vehicle speed sensor and a secondary throttle cable. So this guy mounts right here. This guy also has a little bracket for a throttle cable that can go from the top of here to your engine. But we're going to install this guy, and I'm not putting a lot of torque on these. These cases are not super strong. I go to like 12 foot-pounds on these, but you don't need a lot because there's not a lot of torque on this at all. All right, there we go. That's really the setup for both the speed sensor and what we're going to do with the throttle cable. So we're good there. We have one more thing before we wrap this video and get this in the bus. All right, last step for installing an automatic Vanagon transmission into a bay window bus. If you see here, which you may have seen at any point in the video, you can't check your fluid because all this stuff is in the way. Not gonna work well at least. So what we need to do is actually give this a slight upward bend. I'll be the first to say when you make a bend like that, it actually changes the length of what goes through it. So you need to make a bend, but note the degree to which full is full on your dipstick, just for you to know. I'm gonna get up here, and I really hope one of these cameras is like really focused on my bicep, because things are about to get crazy. Okay, we're gonna step that out. All right, here we go.
You're looking good.
Oh, okay. Here we go. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
There's probably a more scientific way to do this. And if you don't have these guns, all right, let's just do this. Ready? Okay, so we obviously have a bit of a bend there now that we didn't have before, but we can check this. I'm going to anchor this down. So do that now. Charlie, can you focus on the proper area of the camera?
Yeah. It auto-focused.
Okay.
It knows what's up.
Yeah, I'm just going to fall off the whole table here. So yeah, we're looking a little wild on here. Obviously we got a pretty big bend. Also, I'll be the first to say, right around here is where we mount it to the bus. So we may have to still modify this. very, very last thing, when our axle is in, we have clearance. We have, I don't know, a pinky's worth of clearance. This is not going to be moving once it's in the bus, so that is perfectly fine. And this is the stock bend, so we're totally fine with our clearance over here, but just something we want to consider as we're pulling all this together. So there we go. We got our A&N fittings on the back. We got our transmission mount modified, ready to go. We've got our vehicle speed sensor mounted on. We've got 2 different options for a throttle cable, kick down cable going on over here. This is bent and modified, and we're gonna have to potentially further modify it differently. We'll see how we're looking. The only other thing I'll point out is on this guy, we didn't do this in the video, but it's got our Modern Bay Company starter adapter on it with the high torque Bosch 2 kilowatt starter. And this is amazing. I'm really excited about this. This is a gorgeous setup. It's not cheap. Just to be totally, straightforward, you're probably looking at just mostly with the build with German transaxle at this point in time, May 2023, around $7,000. So this is not cheap if you want to go this route, but I think it's going to be pretty awesome, and I know our customers are going to be really happy with this. So let's get this in the bus. What do you think, Charlie? Should we do it?
Heck yeah.
Thank you guys for tuning in. As always, I think I'm supposed to tell you to subscribe and like and all that stuff. Do it if you find it valuable. We really appreciate it. And otherwise, thanks for following along, and we'll see you on here soon.